Action. Welcome, folks, to this filmmaker event here.
Roll sound. Cameras rolling.
Hi, I'm Dan Orozco, and welcome to Butter City. Our guest today is Don Mickelson. She's the founder of Emergence Pictures. Her film, Disobedience, chronicles the story of an openly lesbian pastor and the fervor surrounding her ordination. Her next documentary, Green Green Water, measures the impact that hydropower had on a First Nation community in northern Manitoba. Let's welcome to the show, Don Mickelson. Hi, Don.
Thank you for having me.
I'm glad you're here.
Me too.
So it's been quite a journey. You've really done some pretty cool docs. I mean, we've had some people here who've kind of had some success kind of just with documentaries, but also we really have a lot of people who are doing more of the narrative storytelling. So it's cool to have a documentary filmmaker and a successful documentary filmmaker at that.
Thank you.
Can you talk about the journey to documentary filmmaking? I mean,
The personal journey?
well, I mean, how did you decide you wanted to be a filmmaker and then it became documentaries, or did you always want to make documentaries? Were you glued to PBS as a kid?
No, I avoided PBS as a kid. I wanted to be an actress or a dentist, and somewhere along the way, the path changed. I became politically active early in college, and then kind of fell back into TV. I ended up being a television news reporter at the ABC affiliate in Duluth. Long story about how I got that job, but I got that job and learned that I absolutely love storytelling. I absolutely love meeting people I would normally never meet, the impact of those stories, the immediacy of having all those people hear a story that they otherwise wouldn't hear. I loved every aspect of that. I wasn't so happy with news. So I eventually started working on independent documentary with, at that time, my creative business partner, Jamie Lee.
Okay.
And we did documentaries for a number of years. But yeah, it started as an independent thing that we did on the side, and evolved into what essentially a full career.
Yeah. Well, you know, we had another documentary filmmaker on, Melody Gilbert, and she started in news as well. And one thing that she said was that she liked telling these stories on news, but by the time it was starting to get good and you're really getting people to open up, you cut. You only got 2 minutes to tell a story. So, I mean, now you've kind of branched out. You're making feature-length documentaries. How did you come upon the story of Disobedience?
Honestly, the Reverend Anita Hill was my pastor. I was attending her congregation, and when the conversation about ordaining her came up, initially they were looking for people to do, cameras of the event, and also cameras for the overflow room. And we actually ended up working with a group from, I believe it was Cable Access in Roseville. So a lot of the footage of the ordination is actually from Cable Access, and our camera is mixed in with that. But yeah, it started as just something we were going to do for our church, and then before the ordination kicked into full gear, it became clear that this is a story that has much larger implications than just our church.
Right.
So it took on a life of its own.
So the train really hadn't left the station yet. You were there right from the beginning and had cameras rolling. That's what I was wondering about, is like kind of where you came in the process. But you were there right from the start.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, we're going to take a look at a clip from Disobedience, which was in the 2003 Central Standard Film Festival, and it won Best Documentary, right?
The Audience Award, yes.
Won the Audience Award. Okay, let's take a look.
I was just one vote when it came to it, but it was so weighty to be the only one with a voice who could be openly who I was. What surprised me was immediately after the vote was over, people began to bring the Stoles Project and hand them to me. And as I stepped outside of the cordoned off area for voting members, to be surrounded by young people around the teen group that was in convocation at the assembly, just devastated about it.
I was totally blown away by the amount of pain that I saw on the faces of those youth. I really had no idea that they would have that kind of a reaction. And I bet the rest of the voting members at the churchwide assembly, I bet they were pretty surprised too.
I felt like I had to hold my own emotions at bay in order to be in prayer and ministry with this group of young people that were so hurting. I knew someone was standing behind me with their hands on my shoulders, but I didn't know it was Janelle until later.
I could not handle being in the assembly anymore with these people who seemingly rejected me almost. But it was really hard for me to see H. George Anderson, the presiding bishop at that time, cracking jokes or having fun up at the pulpit when we were in pain.
It was an odd thing to be in that, and yet to offer to them that if they wished to wear the stoles when they did their presentation following, they were welcome to them.
I took the stoles and I put them around the youth and I said, receive this stole as a mantle of leadership. You are the future of the church. And I thought afterwards, I cannot believe that I said that, because what I would have liked to have said is, you are this church. You are this church right now in the present. Not the future commodity, you know, we need you somehow to keep the church going in the future. It's like, no. We are the church together, and I wish I would have said that to them.
It was one of the most powerful experiences I've ever experienced. And then I realized that people needed to see. My young adult friends and I, voting members, we went over while holding hands and kneeled at the foot of the assembly.
I guess, you know, in your movie, you really do show a lot of the, I guess, you know, like I said in my intro, the fervor that surrounded it. There was a lot of negativity, a lot of hate. A lot of people worked very hard to vent their hatred surrounding this situation. And I'm wondering, you know, I mean, you obviously you filmed that and you experienced it. You were a part of what was going on. You were close to the subject. When the movie got into festivals and started being played, and it was played publicly, I mean, did you find that you experienced any of that kind of protest? Did you ever have to deal with that level of?
No, honestly, the response to the film was very positive. Didn't receive any protest per se. I will say that we did have screenings. We did a college and seminary tour of the film, and often the tour was supported by the GLBT, gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender group on campus, as well as campus ministry, which brought a very interesting mix of people to the table. And there were a number of screenings where at the end it turned into a theological debate in the audience. But generally it ended well. And generally it ended with people feeling like they were heard. But I think that was the main thing that was, it's a difficult topic. It's a very personal topic. People feel very passionately and should feel passionately about their spirituality and beliefs. Sure. And so, you know, it brought up a lot of big question marks for audience members. And I remember, I can't tell you how many times I said at the end of screenings, I am not a theologian, I'm a filmmaker. Do we have a theologian in the audience? You know?
Someone take over.
But that said, I think it did what it was supposed to do, in the sense that it was supposed to raise conversation and give people a look at that experience, an experience of a, you know, a small subculture within the church.
Yeah, and I was reading some of the press surrounding it, and someone made a very valid point that really the story of Anita Hill is really just the surface. That there's kind of a theme below it that really affects everybody, and that is sexuality and religion. How do they interplay? And it's not a matter of like that I have to make a judgment or you have to make a judgment or someone has to make a judgment for all of us to adhere to. But it's the fact that those two things come into play in our daily lives, and it's like, how are you going to deal with it? I think is a bigger, almost a bigger issue than Anita Hill, than her situation, which is good filmmaking.
Well, thank you. And I know it brought up questions with Catholics, you know, around the question of celibacy in the priesthood.
Sure.
You know, so there were a number of ways that people could connect to this film besides just the gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender piece.
Right.